Hey you heroes! Welcome to Marvel Champions Monthly, a fan cast about the card game Marvel Champions by Fantasy Flight Games. Thanks for joining us as we complete heroic deeds and thwart the villains' evil schemes.
Hey everybody, welcome to the MCM podcast. That is the Marvel Champions and More podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Kennedy Hawk. Welcome to Volume 5 of Marvel Champions Monthly. Krim, can you believe we've done this for 4 straight years now?
Has it really been that long?
Is that insane or what? That's like over 10% of my life. That's terrifying.
And how many hosts have we had?
I mean, we're not going to count. More than 4.
Yeah.
We keep running them out, but Krim and I are still here to kick off Volume 4. We're going to be kicking off our 3-part episode that we do for each box. So this is going to be the hero episode for Next Evolution. So we've got Krim. He's obviously doing well. Spicy tonight. And we've got another guest. I don't want to say it's a replacement for Americano, because then I have to go into a corner and cry.
Yeah, there's no replacement.
It's like filling the void in my soul. We have Hone with us. How's it going, Hone?
Pretty good. Yeah, big shoes to fill if that's what you're trying to do, but can't. You just made the call. You just made the call. It's like that zero class.
I just made the call. A new ally in. Just get in front of the villain for me, and you'll do your job.
We're gonna make you the pool aspect.
Yes.
Nice.
Yes. You get pink.
Does that mean I only get one release pack then, right? And then you put me aside.
I mean, until they do Lady Deadpool, obviously.
Gwenpool?
Come on, Headpool is gonna get its own character eventually, right?
Or Dreadpool. Isn't that the one that goes and kills? This isn't a Deadpool episode. No. This is a Cable and Domino episode instead. We're finally into X-Force, so let's start talking about some X-Force characters.
I wish it was a Deadpool episode.
We'll get there soon. So every box, we always spend one episode talking about the 2 new heroes and their aspect cards, what their hooks are, what precons they came with, and we each pick out a couple of our favorite cards and talk about some of the tricks we learned playing them. So I think Crimson has volunteered graciously to give us an overview of Domino first. So we'll let you take it away.
Yeah. So my obligatory, amount of play was, with the precons. I like playing the precons because I like to see what FFGX, is saying, here's how we want you to play her. Now, obviously, upgrades are great and everything, but here's the base. And her precon is actually pretty good. I actually was very impressed with her precon, especially with it being Justice, which I think is a very good aspect pairing for her, because she has very little thwart. This allows her to be able to take care of the main scheme and side schemes, even while having one thwart. So her alter ego side is pretty average. It's the 6/9 3 recovery. Her ability is you can choose a card in your hand and swap it with the top card of your discard pile. Limit once per round. So if you're in Alter Ego, what that means is you could use something like, a Genius, play a card, as long as it's not an event card that's going to go to the graveyard. I've done that and then realized what I was doing. Then your next action, you can get that Genius right back.
You know what they call that? Call it a genius move.
It was pretty genius. And then her hero side, she's a 1/2/3. I actually like the stat line for her. I normally definitely prefer the 2/2/2 stat line, but because I play Justice, I'm generally okay with heroes having 1 thwart, because I'm gonna make up for that weakness with my aspect. I definitely prefer the 1/3/2 a lot more, but she's great. The stat line's really good. She has an action that lets you choose a card in your hand and swap it with the top card of your deck. You can do that once per turn. And then when counting resources on cards discarded from the top of your deck, you will count any printed wild icons twice. Only the wild icon. So what this allows you to do is kind of go, okay, I have this card that I'm not going to use in my hand, and it's got a wild icon. I'm going to swap it with the top card of my deck, put that on top of my deck, and then she's got lots of cards that say discard the top card of your deck. For each icon on that card, do X. Well, with her ability, because you stacked the deck, because you cheated, which is, kind of her stick, she lets you cheat and manipulate the deck. Now the wild icon is going to count for 2, so you're getting some extra resources out of nowhere. So to go into her that kind of stick here is, let me find the card here. Domino's Pistols. It's a restricted upgrade, cost 2. Hero, action, attack, exhaust, Domino's Pistol, choose an enemy, and discard the top card of your deck. Deal 1 damage to that enemy for each resource icon discarded this way. This attack gains ranged. So, if you have a wild card in your hand that you're not going to use, swap it for the top card of your deck, tap the pistols down, now you're getting 2 damage out of it instead of 1, because she's going to count twice on that wild icon. And she's got a lot of cards like that. Probability Field. It's a 2-cost upgrade. Interrupt. When you use a basic power, discard the top card of your deck. You get +1 to that power for each resource icon discarded this way, which can essentially make her a 3, 4, 5 in a lot of ways. I think Probability Field is probably her best card. It is extremely strong, but there are lots of great cards in her kit. Luck Be a Lady, a very interesting card, and you can really stack the deck how you want. It is a 1-cost event. Discard the top card of your deck and count the resources on it. For each resource counted this way, if it's a energy, you heal 2 damage. If it's a mental, you remove 2 threat. If it's physical, you deal 3 damage. If it's a wild, choose one of the above. So, she has a resource card called Jackpot, which has 1 of each icon other than wild. So it's got a energy, mental, physical. And then it also says that if this card is discarded from the top of your deck, shuffle it back into your deck. So, cheat, put it on top of your deck, take a card off the top of your deck, then flip this over for one of those. That's 3 icons right there, and then it goes to your hand, or it gets shuffled back into the deck. Now she's only got 1 Jackpot. I wish she came with 2. That would have been really nice.
That'd have been wild.
Yeah, it would have been really nice. But so that's kind of her stick. She's going to obviously have her thwarty card and her attack card that does additional stuff when you flip cards over. But for the most part, what you really start seeing some of her best stuff is with that Probability Field and her pistols. Her upgrades are really strong. And you really notice it when playing her, how important those upgrades are. So yeah, that's kind of her stick, and then she also has, an ally stick with the posse. They're okay. Honestly, the only one of the posse that I really enjoyed, playing was Outlaw. I think the other ones were okay at best, but Outlaw is amazing.
You didn't like White Fox being able to pitch her off the top of your deck and just getting a free 3-cost ally into play?
I mean, White Fox isn't bad, but she's a basic aspect card. And she's really only ever gonna use that ability in a domino deck, really. So in reality, she's just a 3/1/1/3. Nothing special. Now in domino, she does have some more tricks. but she's not in the Domino kit. She's a basic ally, so she could be in other decks too, which I think does take a little bit away from her. But I'm not saying she's not a bad card. Definitely not saying she's a bad card. She's a good card, especially in Domino. But Outlaw felt like one of the better allies that I always wanted to make sure that I got out when I was playing her.
Yeah, that's fair. I think that I really like Domino as a hero. I won't reveal which of these two is my favorite hero yet, but it'll be a wild choice later. What I've noticed about Tony's designs, because Tony designed this box, is it seems like the heroes in this box have lots of like one-of upgrades that upgrade their kit. I mean, there are 2 pistols, but like you mentioned, there's like a ton of upgrades that you want to have. Upgrades and supports, right? Pip the Pup, the Painted Lady, the 2 pistols, Lucky and Good, Lucky Break, Probability Field. Like, definitely Probability Field you want, but like there's so many cards you want that it makes like doing that first cycle through your deck really important. And it really lends itself to like a build style. But what I like with Domino is you can kind of pick like, based on the deck you're doing, what 2 upgrades are the most important for me, and then you fish for those ones. And she can be really fun. So I tried her in a couple aspects. I tried her in her precon, obviously, with Justice. I tried building an aggression deck that was completely based around always knowing what was on top of your deck with Hulk Ally. But because the wild makes you discard him at the end, that didn't work out so well for me. But once I figured out I should be putting physicals on top of my deck, it worked a little better. And then I saw, I think it was a deck by, I can't even remember who now. I'll put the Marvel CDB link in the show notes. But somebody had a deck that was using the Adam Warlock ally, because you discard a random card from your hand. And for each different resource type on it, you get to trigger a thing. And the wild is pick whatever you want. But Jackpot, since it has all 3 resource types, you get to remove 3 threat, heal 3 damage, and deal 3 damage to an enemy. And then you can flip down and put it back into your hand again for the next turn. So every turn, Adam Warlock can just trigger all 3 things. And that was probably my favorite deck that I played with her. But all around good hero. I didn't realize how powerful some of her upgrades like Pip the Pup were, right? I think to me, that's like the standout card that you need to make yourself a flipper. You put a Domino or Posse card from your discard pile on top of your deck. So every turn you can set your deck, and then you can flip up and swap a card from your hand with the top of your deck. So you're like just picking whatever the perfect card is for your hand every time.
Yeah.
Also to note, 2 signature allies. I think this is the first time we've seen that.
I think it is.
It's pretty cool. What do you think, Hone?
Yeah, I ended up playing her in aggression, kind of doing like a no quarter kind of deck there, just because, just trying to do stuff that milled the deck more. I think like between White Fox and some other basic cards like Digging Deep was super fun. I think it's like one of my favorite kind of card things of just being able to mill and get a resource back in your hand, which you could then also put on top of the deck. So that was a lot of fun. And then one of the other things that's interesting about Jackpot too is that response is it's a response, so it's optional. So you can use it to like put into your discard to then, if you know you're going to flip down, you can then like get it back into your hand, not have to like try to find it again. Or like use Pip the Pup as well for some shenanigans. But yeah, especially when you get down to like I feel like a really small deck, like, and you have Jackpot in there, you can get like, I think I've had it pop like 3 times in one turn, which felt like really good, you know.
I found in my plays with her, I actually used her events very little, and I more used aspect events around her, which is the opposite of how a lot of heroes work. A lot of heroes, you really want to like spam their hero events because they're so good, and her events are really good, right? It can be a 2 for 6 quite frequently on the attack, and a 2 for 5 thwart. But I always found myself using the events to either put on top of my deck or as a wild resource, and I was really playing the aspect cards and the upgrades. Probability Field, I know you mentioned it, Krim. I can't remember if you read what it said, but it's an interrupt. When you use a basic power, discard the top card of your deck.
Yep.
You get +1 to that power for this use for each resource icon discarded this way. and it does not like exhaust this to do that. So you can do that every time you activate. And often that gives Domino like a 5 defense as soon as this card is down. And 5 defense is like Spider-Man levels of crazy. So that was pretty cool.
If I could change one thing on one card, it would be the Painted Lady, and I would remove that maximum of 3. Because I was so excited. I had like this whole build that I was gonna do, and then I realized that it says a maximum of 3, and I was so upset. Because what I wanted to do was put half the deck under the Painted Lady, so that way I had a small deck constantly, and then could really control the outcome of what was going on consistently. And do like you said with the jackpot, keep getting it back over and over. But unfortunately, like, you can't, because they like to put limits on their cards now.
Yeah, you have to choose to not shuffle it in and flip. So Painted Lady says, after you discard a card from the top of your deck, attach that card face down here to a maximum of 3. Exhaust Painted Lady to add 1 card attached to your hand.
Yeah. Well, I wasn't even going to use it for the exhaust part. I just wanted to get cards out of my deck.
Yeah, I just play against Kang and he steals the random 8 cards from the top of your deck. You don't need to know what was in there.
Just get rid of the cards that I don't want to see again, and then just have like a 10-card deck that I cycle through every turn.
When you're building Domino, or when you build Domino, do you think you're going to have to include a ton of wild resources beyond her kit? Or do you think her kit provides enough wilds to trigger her ability? Because I think every card except Jackpot is a wild, right?
I think it does, although I would obviously still want to include those Digging Deeps.
Yep.
And I know I've been a fan of this card, and I know not a lot of other people are. I can't remember the name of the card off the top of my head.
Resourceful.
Gross. Yes, thank you.
Gross.
Because that allows me to bank resources pretty much. You know, I play them. I play it onto the field. I don't have to use it. You know, I'm putting it on the field on a turn when I'm doing setups anyways, and then I can pop them. They go to the discard pile. Then I could put it back in my hand, play it back out. Like, there's so many different things that you can do with Resourceful in her kit that I'm sorry, but I would add the 3 Resourcefuls. You knew what card I was talking about, too.
This might be the one deck to get me to play that. I will say that I tried it. I do agree with what you said about White Fox and Posse. I do feel like there's a lot of cards in Domino's Precon that feel like they're designed specifically to only work with her. And there's like niche cases where they might work with other characters, but for the most part, these are like, I feel like White Fox, the Posse, and maybe even Digging Deep. There are some other things that discard cards off your deck that might be a cool tech answer for. But I feel like those cards are really made as like an extension of Domino's hero kit, which to me, I always think that's kind of a bummer. I hate it when there's like, oh, there's these 5 cards that make this hero so much better that like really they have a 20-card hero kit and I only get to pick 20 other cards to add.
I would really like to see them have another hero. Are there more gambling, more luck-based heroes out there? There's got to be, right? Like, I would like to see another hero that uses the discard mechanic from the top of deck. Yeah,
I think that it could work with like Hulk Ally. Do you know of any Hone that like do something with top of deck? Are there reliable ways to trigger Digging Deep?
I don't think there. I mean, just like there's one in each aspect, right? Like, there's no quarter in aggression. There's the deflect, I think, in protection, right?
Yep.
Is there one in leadership?
I'm sure there's not. Leadership needs help.
I think like you could potentially do a thing with Digging Deep if you're doing like the mystic like stuff that came with Adam Warlock, right? Because those are discard off top of your deck, right? Like to do summoning spell.
Oh yeah, and for each different resource type,
leadership is call for aid, right? Like that's the one thing where you can mill for an Avenger.
That makes sense.
So I think there's like that stuff, but it's, you know, it's still like that's a 1-of in your deck, right? Like it's I guess if you're doing Adam Warlock, you can't include all 4 of them. So, but you only get like 1 copy of Digging Deep, so that feels bad. But
I actually now really want to make a meme deck with Call for Aid where I don't actually have any Avengers in my
and
deck.
you just do it to get out
Thinking
White
the
Fox.
same
I just
thing.
play it to mill my entire deck and get 3 copies of Digging Deep put into my hand.
And
because
and
it's
you get
like-
White Fox
And what? Yeah, you get a free White Fox and you get like 3 resources
for an
into your
encounter
hand
card.
for 1 card.
And then you get a shuffle.
So you get
And do it all
you
over
get an
again.
encounter card for that.
Yeah, you just have to know where the 3 cards are, right? If you mulliganed into one, then you're only getting 2, so maybe it's not worth it.
I mean, it's pretty good if you have Pip the Pup in your opening hand, because then you can maybe potentially mill into Jackpot or something.
I'm gonna go build this deck too.
Well, I guess like once you deck, your deck shuffles though, right? So that kind of sucks. I feel like you need like one Avenger ally to like stop it somewhere.
I mean, do you care if your deck shuffles though?
Well, I mean, then you can't like Pip the Pup or whatever to get the Jackpot back in your hand.
Oh, that's true. That's
So
true.
you can't do any of those cheeky shenanigans. Yeah, like Jackpot or Domino is super fun. I think just like anything in a card game for me that does like any kind of like card hand deck discard manipulation are just like a lot of fun to just build around. And like it's a very like kind of brain puzzly, I think, hero. Where I feel like it took me definitely a little while to like figure out, how to actually like optimize each turn properly.
Yeah, there's a lot going on in your turn.
And yeah, I almost always regretted putting stuff under the Painted Lady when I wasn't trying to like mill it for my deck. I was just like, oh, I discarded that weapon. I'll put it on there and then flip to Alter Ego and eventually play it. And then that never happened, especially in True Solo.
Yeah. I tend to flip a lot, even in True Solo, but I was running a lot of Confusion too. So Sonic Rifles were my friend.
I think out of all the events, you're mentioning you don't play a lot of them. I think every time Luck Be a Lady came up, I played it almost every time somehow. Just being able to get like just the diversity on that card for a 1 cost, especially if you're running like a Death Focus or something, because she has so many superpowers.
Yeah, that seems fair.
Plus, it has spicy olives on
Sure. That's what those are.
it. They're spicy olives.
All right. Well, before we go on to Cable, any of the Justice cards that we want to talk about? We talked about a couple of the basic cards. There's 2 Posse characters. There's a Posse team up card that heals each Posse character and readies them. Sharpshooter was one of my favorite cards in this precon. Max 1 per player. When you make a ranged attack, discard the top card of your deck.
I actually
Attack
like that one a
deals
lot.
1 additional damage. That's a Hawkeye card right there. That's where that belongs.
Do you feel like it's a very Domino specific ish cards? I was trying to think if there was a way to put this in like Nova, who also liked Law Wilds, and to give him like range attacks.
No,
I mean, he'd have to have ranged attacks,
Yeah.
right?
yeah, so that's going to be like your War Machines, your Rocket Raccoons. Might be a chance to go back to Rocket Raccoon and try him with it. I don't know. I think it's a decent card if you have a character that has, an armory with them.
That's fair.
It's the ranged attack that makes it more situational. But there's lots of heroes out there that do tons of range attacks. Hell, I think even Cyclops' Optical Blast is a range attack.
If he has a visor, it gains piercing and ranged, I believe.
Yeah.
War Machine has it. Hawkeye has it for every
arrow
attack, right? So it seems useful there. Gambit's charged card can get ranged,
And
right?
can you use it if the ally attacks and has ranged? Are there allies?
I believe it says
Nope,
you, so I think that means you.
Yeah, so it's not an ally;
hero,
it's an upgrade or you.
Yeah.
Oh,
Because otherwise you could do some interesting stuff there, but yeah, nope, you can't. On the Justice cards in there, they kind of suck. I'm not gonna lie, I was not impressed with
Really?
Most of the Justice cards in here. Like,
I mean, I love Overwatch, but it's a reprint. But I
yeah,
like the new
it's
art.
a reprint. I did not like Team Investigation as much as I thought I would.
I feel like it's a multiplayer card, right? Like,
Yeah,
I mean,
and
I guess
don't
we
do a
can
lot of
go into it
multiplayer.
a bit when we talk about Cable and all the player side schemes and stuff, but
Mm-hmm,
Yeah.
mm-hmm.
And the K at best, the 4 per person kind of hurts it. And yeah, it defeats a non-elite minion, but like, let's be honest, most non-elite minions are like 2 or 3 health anyways. They're low.
I don't
Um,
mind take out the guards because it's unique and it costs 0. And if someone's not playing Cable, then the player side scheme limit doesn't matter. So you can just like power up Jessica Jones. You can set up a skilled investigator later. And I mean, if you can turn 4 thwarting into defeating a minion, especially early in some scenarios when there's not a lot of threat yet, it gives like the Justice player something to like, not just something to do, but something that like really helps the team out.
and
But
I
the
would say
victory means it's like 1 use, right? So
yeah, and I would say the advantage is it does cost 0, which is helpful. Even the odds is okay, but I don't like the lightning requirement for this card. I don't understand why it has a lightning requirement on it.
it's also a reprint.
that's another reprint, yeah.
Yeah,
But Cannonball art, come on, team.
yeah, and the 2 allies, they're okay. I mean, Wolfsbane's actually pretty good. I don't know. They're okay. The problem is, are they gonna take up some of my other ally slots for my staple allies that I use? Probably not.
I put Wolfsbane into a flipping Star-Lord deck because he gets to swap a card from his hand with the top of his deck.
Yeah.
So you could like always trigger her ability. That was pretty fun.
Yeah, I'll also get in any kind of shield kind of build, right? With global.
Yep.
I think that's where like
Wolves in space.
yeah, I mean, I think some of this stuff is interesting because like once you like, I think one of the interesting domino builds is like any of the shield stuff because you get to manipulate the deck, so you can actually like stack, you know, like many cards deep for all your activations as well with global.
Yep.
Yeah, if I were to actually make her, like, you know, I would go shield with her 100%.
Should do it for next week. Well, let's pivot to the better aspect and start talking about some blue cards. Do you want to give us an overview of Cable? Because I think when we did our stream, you played Cable. Right?
I did, but I did not play it in blue because I felt like that was a Kenny Hawk thing.
Yeah, it's true. Get off my color.
Yeah. So Cable or Nathan Summers, some alter ego, has 4 recovery. Is mutant soldier traded. So got another soldier. I think we only have a few soldiers, right? Like Cap and War Machine. Is that
War Machine? I think.
Yeah, I think those are the only 2 for heroes. He has a new, card type that we kind of mentioned, player side schemes. And so as part of kind of your deck building, you can include any player side schemes from any aspect. I thought this was neat because, Scott Summers also has a similar thing with like allies, right? And so you get to kind of put the rainbow of player side schemes in here, which obviously is beneficial as more get added to the game. And as a setup, Soldier X says you can search your deck and discard pile for a player side scheme and put it into play. So you don't even have to pay for it. So you get to guarantee a player side scheme kind of automatically in play, like on the opening rip, which is really nice.
And there's one that's better than the rest.
And then on the flip side, on hero side, he has that amazing 2/2/2 stat line, which just makes him really well balanced. And Cable loves just side schemes in general because as a response, limit once per phase. Cable, when he defeats a side scheme, you get to ready him. So especially in like true solo, you can use him to definitely like clear out multiple side teams in a single turn, which feels great. So most of his kit definitely like revolves around player side schemes. He has like his own player side scheme that's part of his signature set, Technovirus Purge, which costs 0. And then it has 5 initial threat. It doesn't scale by player, but Cable's the only one who can remove threat from it. And once you clear it, he gets both the psionic traits, and then he gets +1 to his thwart, attack, and defense, which makes him a 3/3/3 hero, which is pretty fantastic. So then almost all his events, I believe, are psionic as well. So if you want to leave in any of the team building exercise kind of psionic stuff, you definitely have to clear that side scheme. He has a really fantastic kind of resource generator in Grey Malkin, which is a 2-cost support that as resource, you'd exhaust it to generate an energy resource. And after a side scheme is defeated as a response, you can then ready Grey Malkin. So this is kind of like the frictal resistance, I guess, for Cable.
Yep.
Which is, if you're clearing a bunch of side scheme, feels pretty great. And every or most of his events actually like scale based off of the amount of side teams in the victory display. And what's interesting is that there isn't a limit to like how much you can boost it by. So if you have like 5, 6, 7, side teams in there, you can boost like Telekinetic Blast, the 3-cost attack card, which by default 3 for 6 is a little overcosted, but then when you get to boost it for 1 for every side scheme in the victory display, like by the end of the game, this is doing 3 for like 10, 12 easy, right? And same with Mind Scan. Like I feel like Mind Scan just kind of helps, which is thwarting 1, so it's 2 for 3, and then boosts 1 for every side team. So like once you kind of get the side scheme train going, you can like clear side schemes with just Mind Scan, like really easily, which feels fantastic, right?
And the player side schemes are all unique. But when they're in the victory display, uniqueness is not considered. So you can even have like the same player sides in multiplayer. All 4 players could bring the same player side scheme and really stack the victory display eventually, which is pretty crazy.
Yeah.
And he does not get a signature ally.
Yes, he does not. They put 2 in the box, so there wasn't room for a second one.
Yeah.
Domino stole it.
Yeah.
Probability. What is her power? It's like a psionic aura that alters probabilities. So she rolled the dice well.
Nice. But yeah, I feel like what's interesting to talk about is kind of, so you're mentioning there's one that was better than the others. I assume you have a favorite player side scheme, Crimson?
Yeah, the Technovirus Purge is just, that's the one I went for each time. That thing's insane.
In solo, that's what I'd do.
Really?
Yeah.
I never played that in my opening.
It has no downside. Like it doesn't like put an acceleration token, nothing. So, and to be able to make him a 3/3/3 and then give him the psionic trait, huge.
Oh, it's definitely really amazing. It leans itself into like doing go all out builds, in leadership for Cable, because he has like, and 9
usually
there's
not a lot of allies on turn 1 or 2, so this gives you the time to hit it a couple times at the with your 2 thwart. Gives you something to do other than just attack the villain. I just that was the one that I went for every time.
Yeah, in solo, I try to do that, and I try to mulligan for a Mind Scan so that I can use Mind Scan plus my basic activation to just knock it out. But in multiplayer, my favorite one is it's a basic one, build support.
Yep.
Each player searches their deck and discard pile for a support with the cost of 3 or less. Or I think Domino has one that does upgrades, right?
Yeah, superpower training.
Superpower training.
But that's identity
Those are my
specific.
favorite
I
too.
think that's the restriction on superpower training.
I'm okay with that. I'll grab my quiver every time if someone else plays that card for me.
Yeah, actually, even true solo for me, I end up always grabbing build support because I felt like Gray Malkin is such a like speed up card in Cable for me, like being able to get that resource card resource. And so, I mean, the 3/3/3 stat line, of course, is amazing, but I felt like Gray Malkin in the decks that I was playing, like just having that extra resource kind of just helped me play more cards, I think, just consistently. And then if you're clearing, side scheme at the same time, like that's maybe like 1-2, resources extra each turn.
Yeah, I can see that, definitely.
But yeah, I end up playing this. I think my favorite aspect for Cable was Justice. I mean, just side schemes in general, and being able to get up to like 4 base thwart, with Heroic Intuition and Technovar's Purge, just makes you a side scheme plowing machine. And then obviously, like one way or another, doesn't feel bad when clearing a side scheme also readies you, and you draw 3 cards. Like and Gray Malkin readies. Like feels real good.
Yeah. And you get clear the areas for some more card draw.
Yep.
I could definitely, if I hadn't played this in the pre-con, if I had made the deck, it would have been a Justice deck also.
I really like Forced Amnesia with One Way or Another, because One Way or Another is you get to search for the side scheme, right? So you can just pick like the worst side scheme, get it over with right away, and then remove it from the game. That always feels good.
Yep.
Now, I hated this pre-con. I think he's a great hero. I really disliked the pre-con. It felt like it was trying to do too many different things. If I were to build this, I would definitely focus it a little bit more. Like, it's trying to do an ally package with like a psionic package with like a side scheme package, and I'm like, just get rid of the sidearms, get rid of the Uncanny X-Force. I think it's a decent card, but I'm like, unless you're going to go all in,
Yeah, it suffers from being a precon with a team support in it, right? Every time we have those, you probably don't want to run 3 of them because you're going to find it eventually anyway, especially when you have a card that searches for it that you can start with and play. And then you have to include a bunch of allies to make that precon functional, but then he has the second tension for side schemes. So I wasn't a huge fan of the precon, but I did think the precon was super thematic. Like, sidearms and Cable, yes. Mission Leader and Cable, Uncanny X-Force, all the allies they picked, like, the theme was on point. So I was happy with the theme of the precon, but I still think he's, like, an extremely strong character.
I also dislike the Eva. I mean, I think the Eva is a great card if it stayed in play half the time.
The Eva, the Deadpool Eva.
No, for
Phantom
X's, yeah.
Yeah. Because you got to get Phantom X, then you got to.
I mean, that's what Call for Backup's for, right?
I mean, maybe you're one Call for Backup in the deck, right?
I mean, if I'm playing Call for Backup and I get to put a 4-cost ally in for free and it comes with the support, that feels pretty good.
Yeah, I just, it was a little rough. Now, Sunspot is amazing. I thoroughly enjoyed Sunspot. He's pretty much a character that I will enjoy putting in any leadership deck I play.
It's true. New Mutants are the best. I appreciate your theme win there.
He was great.
Yeah. I was thinking about Sunspot with like Thor, with that energy kind of resource required.
Thor, Captain Marvel, pretty fun.
Yep.
The cards from his kit that really stands out to me, one of the cards is Body Slide. In one of our multiplayer games, we had She-Hulk with Cable, so every time he body slides, She-Hulk gets like an extra flip that round. You have to time it right a little bit there, but it's action, change your form. each other player may change to the form you are in out of turn, so you'd get like extra punches with She-Hulk and stuff. It was really fun. We didn't try it with Ant-Man and Wasp yet, but I want to try it where you use an alter ego to change to hero form, and they can like flip-flop forms one extra time.
I mean, we used it in our game with Domino, and that felt really good. Being able to like get
flip
into
down, stack your deck. My least favorite card in his kit is a really strong card, but it slows the game down a lot, especially later in the game. But precognition, hero action. Look at the top X cards from the encounter deck, where X is the number of side schemes in the victory display. You may discard one of them and put the rest back in any order. In multiplayer, when we get to like 8 cards in the victory display and someone plays this, it's like everybody just goes to the kitchen and gets like a snack and a drink. Well, whoever the cable player is has to rearrange the top of the deck and think about their life for 5 minutes. And I think it's because the person that plays cable the most in my group is like an analysis paralysis person as well. But that card for me, too much thinking. I wish there was actually a cap on that one, just so it would like make it a little bit faster.
I'm kind of surprised there's not a cap on his cards in general. Like, it feels like being able to boost a card by like 6+ easily in a game.
I mean,
seems
in
really
theory,
strong.
there's a cap, right? Because you have a limit on player side schemes.
Ish. I mean, it only becomes bigger like in higher player counts, right?
It becomes bigger in higher player counts, but so does like the villain and the threat threshold.
Right, but like no other player's signature card, scales by the number of players in that sense.
This is true.
Right? Like, I mean, Cable by himself, like I feel like I put like 5 to 7 side schemes in his deck,
Yeah, me too. I put every one we have basically.
I think I like leave one out. Like, I don't think I put the Justice card that we were just talking about in. I kind of agree with Crimson that it feels niche, and like I would maybe use that in like some of the Sentinels or Zola, where like you get those attachments, be able to discard the enemy with an attachment that's not elite feels pretty good, like value there. But I think kind of out of those scenarios, it just feels like you're putting in just to have a side scheme.
That's fair.
But yeah, I don't know. He's having like super strong. I think the fact that those don't kind of have limits also just makes him just become like a beast by the end of the game. He's like one like I felt like I was like one-shotting villains by the end of the game sometimes in true solo because villain health just is much more ratchet. Pretty low in the grand scheme of things. Plasma rifle is great. You have a range thing that can basically, for one resource, do 4 damage a turn once you get those side schemes out. One of the cards I feel like that's somewhat interesting that I kind of want to figure out to build deck around is I don't know how to pronounce it. It's the Askanison, the title card.
Yeah.
The one where he gets to remove threat when you defend against an attack. Because that's like a way you can basically trigger his ready on the villain phase potentially.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
If you can like clear a side scheme, so like potentially maybe you can use this with Not Today that removes 2 from any scheme if you defend, right? And you get the +2 defense. So I mean, with Technovirus Verge, you're potentially defending for 5, and then if you don't take damage, you get to remove 2. I think that's how that works, right? And plus Cable's like an 8/3, like you're moving 5 off of a side scheme, so potentially you can get a ready that way, but maybe that's too cute.
You could do something with hard to ignore, right?
Yeah.
After you defend and take no damage, remove a bunch.
But that's only main scheme, right?
Is hard to ignore only main
scheme? Hard to ignore is only main scheme.
Oh, that's only main scheme. We'd have to find one for side schemes. So
I think not.
Jump Flip's also only main scheme.
I think Not Today's the only one.
Yeah, Not Today's the one.
But it's interesting, right? Like maybe you play with a Gamora player that could bring something down with like cross counter or something, and then you could ready. And then there's I think there might be some more stuff coming out the pipe that can deal with stuff on the villain phase, which could be cool, but maybe too cheeky.
Well, I can't wait.
Super strong. I think player side schemes. Do you think they're overtuned?
I do. especially in high player counts. I don't feel like the threat amount matters, especially with Cable on the field. And maybe that's my problem, is we've only really played him with Cable. I haven't, like, I've wanted to go rebuild Hawkeye and put in
Superpower training.
Yeah, superpower training to go find my quiver, because then I have like 2 quivers in my deck, right? And 1 Cable arrow can take that out. But I haven't done that yet, right? Every time we've played player side schemes, it's been with Cable at the table, and with him at the table, they feel extremely overtuned.
Yeah, I mean, like, if you're running Cable, I just think about like Con of Heroes potential or something in a 4-player game. Do you just tell everyone to like sideboard a helicarrier in? You're just like, I don't care, just put a helicarrier in. I'm gonna put build support opening turn, and we get like 4 helicarriers on turn 1.
Yeah, seems pretty ridiculous. Or like the call for backup puts an ally into play, right? For turn 1, we start with 4 allies in play. I mean, that's...
But it, like, call for backup. Like, so I think one of the things that's interesting is like, you know, like the handful of them like build support, super proud training, lock and load outside of like, I feel like the people that actually discard weapons, like your rocket or, you know, hand cannons or something like that.
Yeah.
They feel like all like setup stuff, but I actually think like, I don't care when I draw a call for backup or even establish perimeter, right? Like they're good basically anytime, right? Like any turn I'm happy to get a free ally put into play, right? Or have tough go on everyone. And like established perimeter seems super good for its threat cost. Like 2 per player, everyone gets a tough. That's super strong, right?
Yeah. I do feel like there's no risk to the player side schemes, right?
Yep.
Like, I understand these seem like they're supposed to be like, I don't know, they're like, they don't seem very side schemy either, right? They're just like things that could have been events, but instead they're delayed events that you have to pay a little bit of threat for. But there's no danger to like putting it out and like working on it when it comes through, right? Like established perimeter doesn't put like an acceleration token out because you're putting up a perimeter instead of taking it to the villain. And the lack of tension in those cards is a little disappointing, right? I don't know.
You wish there was like a crisis or amplify icon or something?
I don't know. I wish there was like a... I wish they weren't so strong, man. I do feel like they're pretty strong.
I think there's a good portion of them that are strong. There are a couple that I just have no interest in.
I think some of them are more niche. The discard a minion one isn't great, but like, when you're playing against like Venom Goblin or Green Goblin and everybody's got a minion in front of them, that can still feel really good.
Yeah.
I think the 2 basic ones are amazing.
Yes.
I think lock and load is pretty amazing because everybody can use a weapon, right? If they know to bring one, right? You get a sonic rifle, a stun gun, a Yarn Bjorn, and I don't know what leadership has, something.
You any of the ally weapons, you know, you could use
any of the ally weapons, exactly. Or you can get like some of the basic weapons, right? And like for 8 threat to give everybody a weapon or an upgrade, or like for what is the superpower? That's really my favorite one, right?
That's 3 per player.
Yeah, for 12 threat to give everybody like probably the best upgrade in their deck because it's the one that goes with their ally. Seems pretty good.
What are your thoughts?
I'm sure there's...
I was going to say, like, why do you think Take No Guards has more threat per player than Super Proud Training?
It costs 0. Everything else costs 1, right? I think part of it is because Justice is already good at removing threat and the other ones aren't. So they're maybe trying to balance it for like non-Cable players, right? If I'm the aggression player and I put lock and load in a multiplayer game and I slap that down, removing 8 threats actually really hard for me. I need someone else to help me with that. But in Justice, like you put down an 8 threat side scheme or something, and they're like, "Cool, I knock it out with one blow or something." But I think part of it is the cost. I don't know if like maybe that's what it needed, is the cost should go up by player, right? And Cable could still get that free one at the beginning, but if Call for Backup cost 1 per player and had Alliance, then the team would have to pay 4 resources and remove 12 threat, and then you would get some allies. Instead, you're just discarding one card that you probably didn't care about and blowing up the board. I mean, they're fun, don't get me wrong. I like feeling powerful with them, but they also, especially in standard, feel a little bit overtuned to me.
Is there, would you like, in some ways they almost feel like auto includes a lot of my decks now. Like just having a way to tutor in this game is super strong.
Yeah, I have found that build support and superpower training go in almost every deck I play now.
I got a magic term. Yay.
I wish maybe they needed like a outside of cable, like a limit of how many you could put in your deck. That might have like given tension as well. Like you get 2 player side scheme slots in your deck, unless you're cable, and then you can have infinity.
But then I would just put build support and superpower training and still be happy.
You don't think you'd put the weapon one in sometimes to go get like an aspect weapon or
Yeah, but if I
something?
did take one of the other ones out, I'm not sure I'd be that sad about it because a weapon like is more important or something, right? Like
that's true.
Or like in leadership, it was just like, oh, I just want call for backup because that's strong, right? Like, it's fine.
So you're a Lord of the Rings expert. How did side quests work in Lord of the Rings?
Yeah, so Cable feels like a differentiate, like he's not the exact same by any means, but there's a hero called Thurindir that also has the setup ability that Cable has, where you get to kind of put a side scheme. But it's like worse than Lord of the Rings. It only goes into your hand, so you actually have to play it. And so in Lord of the Rings, they were called side quests. So like in Lord of the Rings, you are questing like once per round. You get to go on a quest, and you got to pick which one. And there's like basically a quest that everyone is trying to do generally, right? So choosing to go on a different side quests that you're putting into play meant like you're not making progress on the thing. So, like the equivalent, I feel like in Marvel Champions would be like, if you put out a side scheme that round and you choose to like remove progress from or something, like you can't attack the villain or something. But, like it doesn't quite hit the same because like you're not going to be probably attacking the villain on turn 1 or something if you're Cable, at least.
Yeah.
But I think that would be the equivalent, right? Like it's a choice when you put it out that like you're choosing to not like basically progress the game. You're like literally going on a side quest. And in some Lord of the Rings things, like there are just quests where like if someone's bringing a side quest deck, it's just like a no-go because it's kind of like playing Hood, right? Where it's like a tempo, or like Mojo, right? Where it's like if you're choosing to like do this thing, like it's a big hit to tempo. And like you just really need to progress against the main quest. So I think they're just more expensive. Like in Cable, I've cleared, when we've played on the stream, like I cleared like 2 player side schemes in one turn, right? Like
multiple times.
Yeah. And like in Lord of the Rings, you cannot clear more than one quest, like a turn
at a
time, like in a round. And so it just felt a lot more impactful, and like it was more expensive. And the other big differences in Marvel Champions, every card in here that is tutoring for something, it goes into play. And every tutoring card in Lord of the Rings just puts it in your hand. So you have to pay for it. And so, but that still felt amazing, right? Because you have a 50 card deck. So like being able to find like a single card that like is the linchpin of your deck and getting into your hand on like turn 1 or 2 is still like really good.
Yeah, so they had something similar to this in Star Wars LCG, and that's not a co-op LCG, but it has a similar situation where you're like attacking each other's objectives, and each player has 3 objectives in play that they have to defend. And by playing a mission, you would basically play a 4th objective that your opponent has to defend. But that means you also have to stage 4 attacks, so you have to spread your units out over more attacks. And there were cool ways to build around them. There were cards kind of like Jessica Jones that would get more powerful if there were more missions or more objectives. But they felt a little bit like less used. And maybe it was because the pod-based deck building in that game, like you could only get 1 mission per pod usually. Because they didn't come out until like the last 2 or 3 cycles. I think it was the Endor cycle where they came out. But yeah, I'm looking through my like binder here now. There's this one ground support. It was like another mission you could attack, and it it felt more like a mission, which is what I thought these were kind of going to be like, or like a preparation kind of thing that you're doing. So after this mission is completed, deal 1 damage to each enemy unit. So like they had the same sort of thing. Like I don't see any downside on these missions. Like it forces your opponent to be able to defend an extra thing, but I felt like resources were more starved in that game, and it forced you to spread your attack resources out thinner, which made it harder to really mount attacks. Whereas in here, I feel like most of the player side schemes I've seen played almost seem negligible. Like they're just like an extra bonus. And I guess, I mean, events don't typically have a downside either, so maybe I shouldn't be so upset. But I mean, I'm not upset. I love them.
Yeah,
they definitely auto includes.
they just help like get people set up much quicker. And I wonder if that will change kind of the villain design kind of stuff, because heroes are now much stronger with I think these player side teams out.
And part of it is cable, right? Like if you don't have cable and you don't get to start with your player side scheme, then you're mulliganing for it and you're paying the resource for it. So you're right. Like as Hawkeye, if I started including superpower training, that costs 1. So I'm already mulliganing for my quiver. If I don't find it and I find superpower training, I have to pay 1 and then thwart 3, and then I can go get my quiver a little bit faster. But that's going to require either 3 thwart activations as Hawkeye or for me to burn a cable arrow. I'm really spending like 2 resources and 2 cards to get 1 card. I don't know. We'll see.
I still think
We'll
you
see
would.
into
I
the
still
future.
think you do it to get your quiver if you don't have it.
Yeah, I still think I'd do it. I'm just saying, I guess it's outside of cable starting with 1. I don't know how consistently they'll help me set up immediately like they do with cable
Oh
versus
yeah.
like sometimes it's like, right, sometimes quiver is just card 40 in your deck. And if superpower training's card 39 and quiver's card 40, you're going to feel really bad.
Well, you just use superpower train to pay for your quiver.
That's true.
It's called a day.
It does have a resource.
Yeah. What do you think if like it forced you to flip down to Ultra Ego? Like you can only scheme for a thing because you're like prepping for it, kind of like Widow themed or something.
That could be cool. I don't know. I don't feel tension with the cards yet. And I think part of that's intentional, right? In Champions, they want us to feel more powerful than they wanted the heroes to feel in Lord of the Rings. And this is just another way of doing that. Anyway, enough ranting about player side schemes. We could do a whole episode about that, I'm sure. I think they're fun. I just do think that I'm going to be including a lot of them in my decks. And
Yeah.
maybe that's good. It makes me buy cards, right? So, to wrap this episode up, because we're over an hour, which hero do you like better? We'll go with Crimson first. Cable or Domino?
Domino, 100%. I like the aspect of the deck building with the pseudo randomness.
Yep. What about you, Hone?
I think I like I definitely enjoy playing Domino more, especially in True Slow, just because I think just her mechanics are just more fun and interesting. Also just find she can play every aspect and she has interesting builds, I think, in every aspect. I know when you and I were talking about Cable, I feel like one of the struggles I had was just like it's really hard not to pick Justice. You know, like I think
Yeah.
he's so slanted towards Justice, which is fine. Like it isn't a problem. But oftentimes usually when heroes have that 2/2/2 stat line, I feel like there's more flexibility. I think there definitely is like a go all out build for Cable though, with that kind of high stat line. That could be fun, but I think Cable, you know, like they're both super strong, but I think Domino is definitely more fun. But I think if I was playing multiplayer, I like rolling Cable also feels just great to get people set up.
Yeah, at conventions I'll play Cable, but for fun I'll play Domino. I think that's it for me. I would rather deck build with Domino than with Cable. I did make a fun aggression Cable deck where I was trying to like stack a ton of attack on Cable and then just use Mind Scan to nuke a player side scheme and then get to attack twice with my big attack stat. But it felt like I was forcing it rather than using Cable what he was meant to be used for. I do feel like he's pushed a little bit into Justice, and I feel like Domino can really be fun to build in all 4 aspects. And I'm sure Cable can too. With more time, I'll probably get there. All right. Well, that's episode 1 for Next Evolution. We don't want to reveal our overall thoughts on the box yet, but next episode we'll be talking about, I think we're going to try to do the first 3 scenarios. So that will be 2 scenarios of Morlock Land and 1 scenario of the Juggernaut. And then the final episode, we will wrap up the last 2 villain scenarios, talk about the modular sets and the campaign overall. So we're back on track in Volume 5. Thanks for tuning in, and thanks for coming on the show.
See you next time, guys.
See ya.
Thanks for tuning in to Marvel Champions Monthly. If you liked this content, be sure to like, subscribe, or leave a comment on the video, letting us know what else you would love to see from the world of Marvel Champions. You can also join us on our Discord, or support our work on Patreon in the links in the description below.